In this chapter, we're going to take a look at political parties. So what is a political party? Well, it's a group or cohesive coalition of people with similar interests, and their goal is to get candidates for their party elected. Parties also serve as what we refer to as linkage institutions, and means to connect citizens to the government. So examples would be going to the polls and choosing between candidates representing either the Republican or Democratic Party, and on occasion the Independent Party. Party competition is how we narrow voters' options down to two, or if there's an independent, three, and in the process enables people to act to elect the person that they so choose. So this is why we have primaries. So when you look at a primary, if you look back at the last presidential election, we had about 10 to 12 individuals running for the Republican Party. We went to the polls, and in the primaries, it came down to Trump for the Republican Party and Hillary Clinton for the Democrat, and clearly President Trump won in the end. We know that political parties are essential to our democracy, and they are also necessary, and they perform a lot of vital functions as far as keeping our government running. At times they can be complicated, they can have internal conflict, they can be rigid, disorganized, decentralized, and they are at risk of being taken over by reformers. If you look at when the Tea Party arose in the Republican Party, Paul Ryan actually was part of the Tea Party, and they weren't happy with the way that the Republican Party was moving, so they kind of switched directions for them. And the political parties also mirror America's society, and they are very deeply rooted in our democratic process. With everything, there are pros and cons, and the same with political parties. So parties have served as a service or serve in a service orientation role, and that is to get their candidate elected. They also encourage and hold accountable their office holders to be responsive to the people and to whatever bills and processes that are going on at the time. And they also get new people into politics. President Trump and President Obama, Obama was a senator, so he was already involved, but he wasn't necessarily looking to run for president at that time, but it was the party that encouraged him, and the party helped the people get excited about it. And as such, President Obama was elected, and the same with President Trump. Once the party started backing him, things started fast forwarding and moving in a positive direction for him, and now he is our current president. Some of the cons, though, is that elections have become personality contests. We have a tendency to let it be a reality TV show, and we don't always look at the qualifications of the individual. We want to make sure that they understand how government works, especially when it comes to foreign affairs, or that they have a good group of people backing them and helping them learn. So we have to be careful not to get caught up into the glitz and vote for somebody because we like their personality, or we like the car they drive, or they like horses, I like horses, so they must be a great person. We have to really do our homework and look into that individual's knowledge. And at times, parties do have a lack of accountability at times, and they like to blame the other party for any shortcomings, and they don't necessarily take responsibility for their own actions. Political parties have changed over time. We know they are not static. It was George Washington who warned against having parties and cautioned that it can rip the country apart. If you look at the slide here, this is of our early political parties, and just to confuse you more as we go on, you'll see that the Democratic Republican parties actually became the Democratic Party. But George Washington, he actually belonged to the Federalist Party, which was led by Alexander Hamilton. And the Federalist Party was one of the first two political parties in the United States. The Federalists originated in opposition to the Democratic Republican Party, and the Federalists dominated the nation until the defeat of John Adams. The party did dissolve, I think it was around 1820, but don't hold me to that date. and its members separated into our current Democratic and Republican parties. So what do our parties stand for? Well, Andrew Jackson, first off, was the first Democrat to be elected to president. And when he was running, he used a donkey to symbolize the working class individuals, because at the time, donkeys were used to plow fields and whatnot, and he was going after the working class vote. And ever since then, the Democrats have also been known as the Party of the Donkey. Jackson was also known as Jackson Jackass by those that opposed him. The Democrat Party today they're commonly perceived as the party of big government. They do, however, try very hard to represent minority rights, environmental rights, labor issues, their civil rights, women's rights, and they are considered pacifists, and they are slow to go to war, and they will argue that diplomacy often goes much farther than war. Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president, and the Republicans became associated with the elephant due to the political cartoonist Thomas Nast. I can't really tell you why he drew it. I think it was supposed to be kind of an insult, but that's some trivia you can look up. But as it stands, that has become, the elephant is the Republican, the donkey is the Democrats, and they both use red, white, and blue to represent the colors of our flags. Now, our today's Republicans, they are the party that want less government involvement. They support the free market, lower taxes. They are considered conservatives, where Democrats are considered liberals. The Republican Party tends to support public policies that limit the size of government, cut taxes, support the war on terror, and they are generally opposed to the legalization of abortion. They are pro-lifers, and they vote against programs to increase the size of welfare. Interesting enough, when you look at the two sides, when you look at the Democratic side, you will see more African American voters, more women, and less white men. Seems to be the richer you are, the lesser you will be to be a Democrat. And with Republicans, it's just the opposite. Now, this is not set in stone. This is just what statistics show us. And of course, there are rich men that are Democrats and African Americans that are Republicans. And finally, we are a two-party system, and this is due to single-member districts set up through our Constitution. Money is essential to parties and campaigns. We have two types that we often refer to. The first is hard money, and this is money given directly to the candidates for their campaigns. This usually comes to individual contributors or interest groups. And then the other type of money that's used is called soft money. And this contribution can be used for party activities such as voter registration, TV ads, anything that can indirectly benefit the candidates. Obama actually raised a lot of money. It was close to $600 million during his campaign. He's right now holds the record for the most money that has been raised. So what do they do with all this money? Well, they often spend it on ads. So we have what we call air wars, and this is when the candidates play off each other's ads to seek the strategic advantage. They advertise through media, TV or radio, and also through social media. If you can see there, Obama and Romney, they spent a lot of money on negative ads, which is where most of the money is usually spent. When we look at Clinton and Trump, Trump actually spent very little money on TV and radio ads, and yet he won. We have ground and web wars. Now, ground wars are when the candidates, they go to different states, counties, and they're trying to convince those moderates or the swing voters or the independents to come to their side. They don't necessarily go after, a staunch Democrat if they're a Republican or vice versa. They're looking for those people that are kind of on the fence. So they go around and they kiss the babies and they give the speeches and they get the crowds excited and they hope to swing the votes. They also use what we call web wars, and this is the internet and social media. And using the internet to politically campaign and receive campaign contributions has increased as time goes on. And Trump was actually one of the largest spenders on social media. He spent $274,000 on ads, and that clearly worked for him. Is it because more people spend more time on the social media than watching TV or reading newspapers? That's going to be something we'll need to study through the years, because one campaign is certainly not going to give us the data that we would need to make that assumption. We're also going to take a look at gerrymandering, apportionment, which occurs every 10 years after the census, because the Constitution states that seats need to be appointed among the several states according to their representative numbers. And gerrymandering is the process by which one party draws district boundaries to their advantage. Here in Florida, we actually have rules against gerrymandering. We put it in as a constitutional amendment to stop this, but I'm sure it still goes on. So we look at the population in a particular area when we're a candidate, and we see, where can we win? So they're looking at, how many voters are in this district and how many voters are in that district, because this district will be voting for me, and I don't care about that district because they won't be voting for me. So after the census, which is every 10 years, new lines are redrawn. During this time, states can gain, lose, or keep the same amount of seats in Congress. That's another reason we do it. And the goal is to provide equal representation according to our Constitution. There are two downfalls to doing the redistricting, and this is part of gerrymandering, and these are cracking and packing. So what is cracking? Cracking is when they take district lines and they draw them so the minority population is broken up. And this is so that there are less members of minorities in one district. Gives them a lower count in other districts, because if they're trying to, if the minorities are against that individual, then if they're broken up throughout the district, it's really not going to make a difference how they vote. The other way is packing, and this is when they draw the district boundary lines so that there is an increased number of minorities in an area. So they pack them into as few districts as possible. And this can be helpful, and it can be, hurtful depending on who you are and what area you are running in. So that kind of is the overview. You can read more about all this in your Chapter 9, which is located in Canvas. Thanks.